Hello! Greetings, salutations, konnichiwa, and every other form of green across this vast, marvelous multiverse. I am Matsu Quinox. This is Horace, and welcome back, my dear, marvelous, wonderful scholars, to the study. Hello there. Hello there, Kinchan. Congratulations on getting first. Why am I not surprised you were first? Have fun with the fairy tales? Well, I hope I will. Hello there, Private Maverick. Welcome. Hello there, Julian20. Welcome. You look so handsome. Ah, thank you. I am flattered. Cool Skeleton. Hello there, Cool Skeleton. Fancy. Well, thank you so much. This is my rarely seen second outfit, which I actually never properly debuted. I just made it. You know what? I've been really bad at debuting other outfits that I've created for this stream. I've actually got like, I want to say about 5 different outfits that I've made for various different events, and I've never actually properly debuted them. Julian20, bet you sparkle off. Well, kind of. The collar part sparkles. Skeleton, you put that together? Wow. Yes, I did. I did put it together. I designed it and I modeled it for myself. Yes. Yes, I've just never actually gone to the trouble of doing any events with any new models or new designs, which in retrospect seems a little bit odd and a little wasted. But you never know. Maybe in the future I'll debut something new, something different. We'll see. So, how is everyone this fine morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whenever you are across this vast, wonderful omniverse? Hello there, Dr. Zadia. Wow, welcome. Good to see you here. Wasn't expecting to see Dr. Zadia tonight. Cool skeleton fashion show. Yes, I'll be fashionable. That's my little hair flick for being fashionable. Julian20 redeemed. Oh, an out of context reading. Oh my goodness gracious. I have to find a book then. One moment, my dear scholars. Nope. I'm fine. I'm here. My model kind of stops whenever I move away from camera. My manifestation freezes in this dimensional plane whenever I have to move away a little bit to grab a book. Okay, so Julian20 requested a out of context reading. Oh my goodness, so much coughing. Cool Skeleton, I got some work on a V2 model. Oh, that's wonderful, Cool Skeleton. I look forward to it. Okay, let's see. A death. Yeah. A dead silence wrenched Harlan out of his reverie. He was in the life plotter's office once more. Sociologist Voy was watching him out of the corner of his eye. Ferruqua's death head was lowering at him, and the silence was piercing. Alright, that's your out of context reading, Julian20. If anyone can guess what that's from, oh my goodness, I'll be surprised. Oh, congratulations! Thank you for the 5 stream watch streak. Oh my goodness, Private Maverick. That's nice. Julian20, ooh, thank you. No idea. Well, the things with the out of context reading is whenever I read it, it can be either public domain or copyrighted work. So I just grab a random book and read from it. It's not long enough, I think, to get any sort of copyright infringement. It's just like a few lines. Oh my goodness, I have to. Oh, speaking of reading tonight, my dear scholars. Oh my goodness, we are going to be reading, as Kintron said, some fairy tales tonight. You can probably hear that clap. So tonight, my dear scholars, we'll be reading from the Crimson Fairy Book, which sounds a lot more scarier than it actually is. So Andrew Lane and his wife did I think she did all the translations for the book. He took fairy tales and folk tales from all around the world and put them together in what became known as the Color Fairy Book series. And there were quite a few. The red, blue, green, yellow, and then you got into violet, lavender, indigo, crimson, and he just kept publishing them on and on and on. Crimson is one of the later ones. I'm not sure which one it is in the list. Kind of surprised that the yellow fairy book's so far. The blue fairy book was the first one, I think, or maybe not. Kinchun, I think it's number 8, but there were other books that came in between. Oh, okay, okay, that explains it. But yes, so this is one of the later ones. So, but yes, we're gonna be reading as many fairy tales as I can read tonight. I don't know if this will be multiple streams. I think this will just be a one-off for now. And of course, I must give some a call out to Kintron, who has been reading the Andrew Lane fairy books. So if you want to hear some of the other ones, please check out Kintron's channel and Kintron's YouTube channel as well. I'll give a quick shout out to you, Kintron, because again, you are a master fairy book reader. I think. How do I do that? Shout out. There we go. There we go, Kintron. It's shout out just for you, because again, I cannot top your readings of these books. You are the expert. Oh my goodness. One moment, my dear scholars. No, never mind, never mind. I thought I heard Ovid and Virgil talking about something, but I don't think it's anything to worry about right now. So then, my dear wonderful scholars, shall we begin our reading of the Crimson Fairy Book and see what tales we can find inside? Julian, yes, please. All right. So then, my dear scholars, sit back, relax, have a hot or cold beverage of your liking, dim the lights if you wish, and let us begin our reading of the Crimson Fairy Book by Andrew W. Lane. I had to double check the title for this. Gotta open up another water. I've got so much water. Now the question is, my dear scholars, do we read the introduction, which, you know, to be honest, I'm going to skip it because of some of the wording he uses. But I will say that Lane in this preface, you can hear him speaking through gritted teeth as he writes this. He sounds very, very fed up with the fact that he keeps on having to write these books. Although, he does specify in it that he is the editor. He is not the author in it. says here, he's. It sounds like he's more fed up with the fact that people keep asking how he writes these stories, and he just keeps wanting to tell them, "No, I don't write them. I collect them. I have nothing to do with the stories." It's kind of hilarious. I'll mention this line. These explanations have frequently been offered already, but as far as ladies and children are concerned, to no purpose. Basically, all of his fans they're begging him to tell him how he writes these stories, and he's keeps telling them, "No, I collect them. My wife translates them," and they're still begging him to talk about how he writes them, and he's given up. Excuse me. Oh my goodness gracious. Pardon the cough. All right then. I'll probably butcher some of these names. Lovely Ilanka. There was once a king's son who told his father that he wished to marry. "No, no," said the king. "You must not be in such a hurry. Wait till you have done some great deed. My father did not let me marry till I had won the golden sword you see me wear." The prince was much disappointed, but he never dreamed of disobeying his father, and he began to think with all his might what he could do. It was no use staying at home, so one day he wandered out into the world to try his luck, and as he walked along he came to a little hut, in which he found an old woman crouching over the fire. "Good evening, mother. I see you have lived long in this world. Do you know anything about the three bulrushes?"
Yes, indeed. I've lived long and been much about in the world, but I have never seen or heard anything of what you ask. Still, if you will wait till tomorrow, I may be able to tell you something.
Well, he waited till the morning, and quite early the old woman appeared and took out a little pipe and blew in it, and in a moment all the crows in the world were flying about her. Not one was missing. Then she asked if they knew anything about the three bulrushes, but not one of them did. The prince went on his way, and a little further on he found another hut in which lived an old man. On being questioned, the old man said he knew nothing, but begged the prince to stay overnight. And the next morning the old man called all the ravens together, but they too had nothing to tell. Kintron, bulrushes are cattails for those curious. Thank you, Kintron. If you can offer any sort of information about these stories, please do for our wonderful readers. Listeners, not readers. The prince bade him farewell and set out. He wandered so far that he crossed 7 kingdoms, and at last one evening he came to a little house in which was an old woman. Kintron, it just knowing what they are later on. Ah, okay. "Good evening, dear mother," said he politely.
Good evening to you, my dear son.
Answered the old woman.
It is lucky for you that you spoke to me, or you would have met with a horrible death.
That's lovely to hear.
But may I ask, where are you going?
I am seeking the three bulrushes. Do you know anything about them?
I don't know anything myself, but wait till tomorrow. Perhaps I can tell you then.
So the next morning she blew on her pipe, and lo and behold, every magpie in the world flew up. That is to say, all the magpies except one, who had broken a leg and a wing. The old woman sent after it at once, and when she questioned the magpies, the crippled one was the only one who knew where the three bulrushes were. Then the prince started off with the lame magpie. They went on and on till they reached a great stone wall, many, many feet high.
Now, Prince,
Said the magpie.
the 3 bulrushes are behind that wall.
The prince wasted no time. He set his horse at the wall and leaped over it. Then he looked about for the 3 bulrushes, pulled them up, and set off with them on his way home. As he rode along, one of the bulrushes happened to knock against something. It split open, and only think, out sprang a lovely girl, who said, "My heart's love, you are mine, and I am yours. Do give me a glass of water." But how could the prince give it her when there was no water at hand? So the lovely maiden flew away. He split the second bulrush as an experiment, and just the same thing happened. How careful he was of the third bulrush! He waited till he came to a well. There he split it open, and out sprang a maiden 7 times lovelier than either of the others. And she too said, "My heart's love, I am yours, and you are mine. Do give me a glass of water." This time the water was ready, and the girl did not fly away, but she and the prince promised to love each other always. Then they set out for home. They soon reached the prince's country, and as he wished to bring his promised bride back in a fine coach, he went on to the town to fetch one. In the field where the well was, the king's swineherds and cowherds were feeding their droves, and the prince left Ilonka, for that was her name, in their care. Unluckily, the chief swineherd had an ugly old daughter, and whilst the prince was away he dressed her up in fine clothes, and threw Ilonka into the well. The prince returned before long, bringing with him his father and mother and a great train of courtiers to escort Ilonka home. But how they all stared when they saw the swineherd's ugly daughter! However, there was nothing for it but to take her home, and 2 days later the prince married her, and her father and his father gave up the crown to him. But he had no peace. He knew very well he had been cheated, though he could not think how. Once he desired to have some water brought him. Yeah, once he desired to have some water brought him from the well into which Ilonka had been thrown. The coachman went for it, and in the bucket he pulled up a pretty little duck was swimming. He looked wonderingly at it, and all of a sudden it disappeared, and he found a dirty-looking girl standing near him. The girl returned with him and managed to get a place as housemaid in the palace. Of course, she was very busy all day long, but whenever she had a little spare time, she sat down to spin. More water. Her distaff turned of itself, and her spindle span by itself, and the flax wound itself off, and however much she might use, there was always plenty left. When the queen, or rather the swineherd's daughter, heard of this, she very much wished to have the distaff, but the girl flatly refused to give it to her. However, at last she consented, on condition that she might sleep one night in the king's room. The queen was very angry and scolded her well, but as she longed to have the distaff, she consented, though she gave the king a sleeping draught at supper. Then the girl went to the king's room, looking 7 times lovelier than ever. She bent over the sleeper and said, "My heart's love, I am yours, and you are mine. Speak to me but once. I am your Ilanka." But the king was so sound asleep he neither heard nor spoke, and Ilanka left the room, sadly thinking he was ashamed to own her. Soon after, the queen again sent to say that she wanted to buy the spindle. The girl agreed to let her have it on the same conditions as before. But this time, also, the queen took care to give the king a sleeping draught. And once more Ilanka went to the king's room and spoke to him. Whisper as sweetly as she might, she could get no answer. Now, some of the king's servants had taken note of the matter, and warned their master not to eat and drink anything that the queen offered him, as for 2 nights running she had given him a sleeping draught. The queen had no idea that her doings had been discovered, and when a few days later she wanted the flax and had to pay the same price for it, she felt no fears at all. At supper that night the queen offered the king all sorts of nice things to eat and drink, but he declared he was not hungry, and went early to bed. Ooh. The queen repented bitterly her promise to the girl, but it was too late to recall it, for Ilanka had already entered the king's room, where he lay anxiously waiting for something he knew not what. All of a sudden he saw a lovely maiden who bent over him and said, "My dearest love, I am yours, and you are mine. Speak to me, for I am your Ilanka." At these words the king's heart bounded within him. He sprang up and embraced and kissed her, and she told him all her adventures since the moment he had left her. And when he heard all that Ilanka had suffered and how he had been deceived, he vowed he would be revenged. So he gave orders that the swineherd, his wife, and daughter should all be hanged. And so they were. The next day the king was married, with great rejoicings, to the fair Ilanka. And if they are not yet dead, why, they are still living. So he makes a note at the bottom here. It says, from Ungarisch Murikin, which I can't, that's German, so I can't really pronounce it properly. But I do like that they note where the story is from at the end. I feel kind of sad though for the swineherd's wife. As far as we know, she had nothing to do with it. She's not even mentioned till the very final page of the story. It did. You have to feel a little bad for her, unless she and her husband conspired for it. Who knows? Kinchon. So bulrushes, cattails burst when they're ready for seed to bloom. Excuse me. The seeds are like cottony fluff, so blow away if not dampened by water. Interesting. That makes sense then. Julian 20 victim. That is fascinating, Kinchon. Thank you. All right, on to the next story then. Excuse me. Again, you'll hear a lot of coughing from me, unfortunately. Oh, this is a longer one. This is entitled Lucky Luck. Once upon a time there was a king who had an only son. When the lad was about 18 years old, his father had to go to fight in a war against a neighboring country. Kinchon, it's why cattails are usually found growing by water. Oh, cool. That makes sense then. He bade his son act as regent in his absence, but ordered him on no account to marry till he return. Time went by. The prince ruled the country and never had even thought of marrying. But when he reached his 25th birthday, he began to think that it might be rather nice to have a wife, and he thought so much that at last he got quite eager about it. He remembered, however, what his father had said, and waited some time longer, till at last it was 10 years since the king went out to war. Then the prince called his couriers about him and set off with a great retinue to seek a bride. He hardly knew which way to go, so he wandered about for 20 days when suddenly he found himself in his father's camp. The king was delighted to see his son and had a great many questions to ask and answer. But when he heard that instead of quietly waiting for him at home, the prince was starting off to seek a wife, he was very angry and said,
You may go where you please, but I will not leave any of my people with you.
only one faithful servant stayed with the prince and refused to part from him. They journeyed over hill and dale till they came to a place called Gold Town. The king of Gold Town had a lovely daughter, and the prince, who soon heard about her beauty, could not rest till he saw her. He was very kindly received, for he was extremely good looking and had charming manners, so he lost no time in asking for her hand, and her parents gave her to him with joy. The wedding took place at once, and the feasting and rejoicings went on for a whole month. At the end of the month they set off for home, but as the journey was a long one, they spent the first evening at an inn. Everyone in the house slept, and only the faithful servant kept watch. About midnight, he heard 3 crows who had flown to the roof, talking together.
There's a handsome couple which arrived here tonight. It seems quite a pity they should lose their lives so soon. Truly,
said the second crow,
for tomorrow, when midday strikes, the bridge over the gold stream will break, just as they are driving over it. But listen, whoever overhears and tells what we have said will be turned to stone up to his knees.
The crows had hardly done speaking when away they flew, and close upon them followed 3 pigeons. Even if the prince and princess that voice is a little too goofy. Even if the prince and princess get safe over the bridge, they will perish, said they. For the king is going to send a carriage to meet them, which looks as new as paint. But when they are seated in it, a raging wind will rise and whirl the carriage away into the clouds. Then it will fall suddenly to earth, and they will be killed. But anyone who hears and betrays what we have said will be turned to stone up to his waist. With that, the pigeons flew off, and 3 eagles took their places. And this is what they said.
If the young couple does manage to escape the dangers of the bridge, and the carriage, the king means to send them each a splendid gold embroidered robe. When they put these on, they will be burnt up at once, but whoever hears and repeats this will turn to stone, from head to foot.
Early next morning the travelers got up and breakfasted. They began to tell each other their dreams. At last the servant said, Gracious prince, I dreamt that if your royal highness would grant all I asked, we should get home safe and sound. But if you did not, we would certainly be lost. My dreams never deceive me, so I entreat you to follow my advice during the rest of the journey."
Don't make such a fuss about
A dream, said the prince. Dreams are but clouds. Still, to prevent your being anxious, I will promise to do as you wish. With that, they set out on their journey. At midday, they reached the gold stream. When they got to the bridge, the servant said, "Let us leave the carriage here, my prince, and walk a little way. The town is not far off, and we can easily get another carriage there, for the wheels of this one are bad and will not hold out much longer." The prince looked well at the carriage. He did not think it looked so unsafe as his servant said, but he had given his word, and he held to it. They got down and loaded the horses with the luggage. The prince and his bride walked over the bridge, but the servant said he would ride the horses through the stream so as to water and bathe them. They reached the other side without harm, and bought a new carriage in the town, which was quite near, and set off once more on their travels. But they had not gone far when they met a messenger from the king, who said to the prince, "His Majesty has sent your Royal Highness this beautiful carriage, so that you may make a fitting entry into your own country and amongst your own people." Excuse me. The prince was so delighted that he could not speak, but the servant said, "My lord, let me examine this carriage first, and then you can get in if I find it is at it, then you can get in if I find it is all right. Otherwise, we had better stay in our own." The prince made no objections, and after looking the carriage well over, the servant said, "It is as bad as it is smart." And with that he knocked it all to pieces, and they went on in the one they had bought. At last they reached the frontier. There another messenger was waiting for them, who said that the king had sent two splendid robes for the prince and his bride, and begged that they would wear them for their state entry. But the servant implored the prince to have nothing to do with them, and never gave him any peace till he obtained leave to destroy the robes. The old king was furious when he found that all his arts had failed, that his son still lived, and that he would have to give up the crown to him now he was married, for that was the law of the land. He longed to know how the prince had escaped, and said,
"My dear son, I do indeed rejoice to have you safely back, but I cannot imagine why the beautiful carriage and the splendid robes I sent did not please you, why you had them destroyed."
"Indeed, sire," said the prince, "I was myself much annoyed at this destruction, but my servant had begged to direct everything on the journey, and I had promised him that he should do so. He declared we could not possibly get home safely until I did as he told him." The old king fell into a tremendous rage. He called his council together and condemned the servant to death. The gallows was put up in the square in front of the palace. The servant was led out and his sentence read to him. The rope was being placed around his neck when he begged to be allowed a few last words. Water. "On our journey home," he said, "we spent the first night at an inn. I did not sleep, but kept watch all night." And then he went on to tell what the crows had said, and as he spoke he turned a stone up to his knees. The prince called to him to say no more, as he had proved his innocence. Oh, thank you, Yulian20, for the posture check. Oh, my goodness gracious. But the servant paid no heed to him, and by the time his story was done, he had turned to stone, from head to foot. Oh, how grieved the prince was to lose his faithful servant. And what pained him most was the thought that he was lost through his very faithfulness. And he determined to travel all over the world and never rest till he found some means of restoring him to life. Now there lived at court an old woman who had been the prince's nurse. To her he confided all his plans and left his wife, the princess, in her care.
You have a long way before you, my son,
Said the old woman.
you must never return till you have met with Lucky Luck. If he cannot help you, no one on earth can.
So the prince set off to try to find Lucky Luck. He walked and walked till he got beyond his own country. And he wandered through a wood for 3 days, but did not meet a living being in it. At the end of the third day, he came to a river near which stood a large mill. Here he spent the night. When he was leaving next morning, the miller asked him,
My gracious lord, where are you going all alone?
The prince told him.
Then I beg your highness to ask Lucky Luck this question. Why is it, though I have an excellent mill, with all its machinery complete, and get plenty of grain to grind, I am so poor that I hardly know how to live from one day to another?
The prince promised to inquire and went on his way. He wandered about for 3 days more, and at the end of the third day he saw a little town. It was quite late when he reached it, but he could discover no light anywhere, and walked almost right through it without finding a house where he could turn in. But far away at the end of the town he saw a light in a window. He went straight to it, and in the house were 3 girls playing a game together. The prince asked for a night's lodging, and they took him in, gave him some supper, and got a room ready for him where he slept. Next morning, when he was leaving, they asked where he was going, and he told them his story. "Gracious prince," said the maidens, "do ask Lucky Luck how it happens that here we are over 30 years old, and no lover has come to woo us, though we are good, pretty, and very industrious." The prince promised to inquire, and went on his way. Then he came to a great forest, and wandered about in it from morning to night, and from night to morning, before he got near the other end. Here he found a pretty stream, which was different from other streams, as instead of flowing, it stood still, and began to talk.
Sir Prince, tell me what brings you into these wilds. It must have been flowing here 100 years, and more, and nobody has ever yet come by.
"I will tell you," answered the prince, "if you will divide yourself so that I may walk through." The stream parted at once, and the prince walked through without wetting his feet, and directly he got to the other side he told his story as he had promised.
Oh, do ask Lucky Luck, cried the brook. Why, though I am such a clean, bright, rapid stream, I never have a fish or any other living creature in my waters.
It's hard to do babbling brook sounds. The prince said he would do so, and continued his journey. When he got quite clear of the forest, he walked on through a lovely valley, till he reached a little house thatched with rushes, and went in to rest, for he was very tired. Everything in the house was beautifully clean and tidy. and a cheerful, honest-looking old woman was sitting by the fire. "Good morning, mother," said the prince.
May luck be with you, my son. What brings you into these parts?
"I am looking for Lucky Luck," replied the prince.
Then you have come to the right place, my son, for I am his mother. He is not at home just now. He is out digging in the vineyard. Do you go too? Here are two spades. When you find him, begin to dig, but don't speak a word to him. It is now 11 o'clock. When he sits down to eat his dinner, sit beside him and eat with him. After dinner he will question you, and then tell him all your troubles freely. He will answer whatever you may ask."
With that she showed him the way, and the prince went and did just as she had told him. After dinner they lay down to rest. Excuse me. All of a sudden Lucky Luck began to speak, and said,
"Tell me, what sort of man are you? For since you came here you have not spoken a word."
"I am not dumb," replied the young man, "but I am that unhappy prince whose faithful servant has been turned to stone, and I want to know how to help him." Excuse me.
"And you do well, for he deserves everything. Go back, and when you get home your wife will just have had a little boy. Take 3 drops of blood from the child's little finger, rub them on your servant's wrists with a blade of grass, and he will return to life."
Oh gosh. "I have another thing to ask," said the prince when he had thanked him. "In the forest near here is a fine stream, but not a fish or other living creature in it. Why is this?"
"Because no one has ever been drowned in this stream. But take care in crossing to get as near the other side as you can before you say so, or you may be the first victim yourself."
Oh, jeez, I can see where this is going. I know fairy tales well enough. Another question, please, before I go. On my way here I lodged one night in the house of 3 maidens. All were well mannered, hard-working, and pretty, and yet none has had a wooer. Why was that?"
"Because they always throw out their sweepings in the face of the sun."
Kid Sean, yes, I can guess I can guess that you and I are the same mind in this. We know what's going to happen. "And why is it that a miller who has a large mill with all the best machinery and gets plenty of corn to grind is so poor that he can hardly live from day to day?"
"Because the miller keeps everything for himself, and does not give to those who need it."
I forgot to unmute myself. Hello there, One True L. Welcome. We are in the middle of reading Lucky Luck. Do have a seat. Thank you, Kid Sean, for mentioning the mic. The prince wrote down the answers to his questions, took a friendly leave of Lucky Luck, and set off for home. Oh, thank you for the hydrate, One True L. When he reached the stream, it asked it. He had asked if he brought it any good news. "So, when I get across, I will tell you," said he. So the stream parted. He walked through and on to the highest part of the bank. He stopped and shouted out, "Listen, O stream, Lucky Luck says you will never have any living creature in your waters until someone is drowned in you." The words were hardly out of his mouth when the stream swelled and overflowed till it reached the rock up which he had climbed, and dashed so far up that the spray flew over him. But he clung on tight, and after failing to reach him 3 times, the stream returned to its proper course. Then the prince climbed down, dried himself in the sun, and set out on his march home. He spent the night once more at the mill, and gave the miller his answer. And by he told the 3 sisters not to throw out all their sweepings in the face of the sun. The prince had hardly arrived at home when some thief. Oh, not. Oh, it isn't that ending, huh? I was wrong! The prince had hardly arrived at home when some thieves tried to fold the stream with a fine horse they had stolen. When they were halfway across, the stream rose so suddenly that it swept them all away. From that time it became the best fishing stream in the countryside. The miller too began to give alms and became a very good man, and in time grew so rich he hardly knew how much he had. And the 3 sisters, now that they no longer insulted the sun, had each a wooer within a week. When the prince got home he found that his wife had just got a fine little boy. He did not lose a moment in pricking the baby's finger till the blood ran, and he brushed it on the wrist of the stone figure, which shuddered all over and split with a loud noise in several parts. And there was the faithful servant alive and well. When the old king saw this, he foamed with rage, stared wildly about, flung himself on the ground, and died. The servant stayed on with his royal master, and served him faithfully till all the rest of his life. And if neither of them is dead, he is sure serving him still. Yeah, it didn't go in the direction I thought it was. I was certain that the king was the one who was going to get drowned in the stream. Because that's what usually happens in these style of fairy tales. I've heard variations on this story, by the way. Specifically, the devil with 3 golden hairs, which I believe the Grimm brothers collected. There was a variation in done on Jim Henson's The Storyteller, which I only learned about recently. I only learned about that show recently, which they called The Luck Child, which has a similar outcome. And I heard a variation on this story about the faithful servant where it's really dark. It's a Swedish version. And the solution. Kintron Luckchild has it too. Yes, yes. The solution in that one, in the Swedish version, is not to take like 3 drops of blood from the baby, but to actually. This sounds really horrible. To behead the child. And they do it. They actually do it. But the faithful servant, after he comes to life, brings the child back to life as well. It's just weird. Kintron, faithful Hans has the child beheading. Yes, Kintron, yes, that one. You know, it is good to have someone who appreciates folk tales and fairy tales as much as I do. It's good to have you here, Kintron. You know exactly what I'm referring to. Next story, then. The Hairy Man. Somewhere or other, but I don't know where, there lived a king who owned 2 remarkably fine fields of. I'm going to substitute the word here because the word can be used for another reference. Kinshon, there's another where a prince searches for a wife, but it ends up with birds and nutshells as the maidens. Oh, interesting, interesting. Who owned 2 remarkably fine fields of wheat. but every night two of the wheat heaps were burnt down in one of the fields. The king was extremely angry at this, and sent out soldiers to catch whoever had set fire to the ricks. But it was all of no use, not a soul could they see. Then he offered 900 crowns to anyone who caught the evildoer, and at the same time ordered that whoever did not keep proper watch over the fields should be killed. But though there were a great many people, none seemed able to protect the fields. Kintron, again, he didn't have water and cracked the second one to check. There was a Hungarian folktales adaptation too, where it was with fairies in it rather than women, and they would die without the water rather than fly away. The king had already put 99 people to death when a little swineherd came to him who had two dogs. One was called Psst and the other Hush, and the boy told the king he would watch over the ricks. When it grew dark, he climbed up on the top of the fourth rick, from which he could see the whole field. About 11 o'clock, he thought he saw someone going to a rick and putting a light to it. Just you wait, thought he, and called out to his dogs. Hi! Psst! Hush! Catch him! But Psst and Hush had not waited for orders, and in 5 minutes the man was caught. Next morning he was brought bound before the king, who was so pleased with the boy that he gave him 1,000 crowns at once. The prisoner was all covered with hair, almost like an animal, and altogether he was so curious to look at that the king locked him up in a strong room, and sent out letters of invitation to all the other kings and princes, asking them to come and see this wonder. This was all very well, but the king had a little boy of 10 years old who went to look at the hairy man also, and the man begged so hard to be set free that the boy took pity on him. He stole the key of the strong room from his mother and opened the door. Then he took the key back, but the hairy man escaped and went off into the world. Then the kings and princes began to arrive one after another, and all were most anxious to see the hairy man. But he was gone. The king nearly burst with rage and with the shame he felt. He questioned his wife sharply and told her if she could not find and bring back the hairy man, he would put her in a hut made of rushes and burn her there. The queen declared she had had nothing to do with the matter. If her son had happened to take the key, it had not been with her knowledge. So they fetched the little prince and asked him all sorts of questions, and at last he owned that he had let the hairy man out. The king ordered his servants to take the boy into the forest and to kill him there, and to bring back part of his liver and lungs. There was grief all over the palace when the king's command was known, for he was a great favorite. But there was no help for it, and they took the boy out into the forest. But the man was sorry for him, and shot a dog and carried pieces of his lungs and liver to the king, who was satisfied and did not trouble himself any more. More water. The prince wandered about in the forest and lived as best he could for 5 years. One day he came upon a poor little cottage in which there was an old man. They began to talk, and the prince told his story and sad fate. Then they recognized each other, for the old fellow was no other than the hairy man whom the prince had set free, and had lived ever since in the forest. The prince stayed here for 2 years. Then he wished to go further. The old man begged him hard to stay, but he would not. So his hairy friend gave him a golden apple, out of which came a horse with a golden mane and a golden staff with which to guide the horse. The old man also gave him a silver apple, out of which came the most beautiful hussars, and a silver staff, and a copper apple, from which he could draw as many foot soldiers as ever he wished, and a copper staff. He made the prince swear solemnly to take the greatest care of these presents, and then he let him go. The boy wandered on till he came to a large town. Here he took service in the king's palace, and as no one troubled themselves about him, he lived quietly on. One day news was brought to the king that he must go out to war. He was horribly frightened, for he had had a very small army, but he had to go all the same. When they had all left, the prince said to the housekeeper, "Give me leave to go to the next village. I owe a small bill there, and I want to go and pay it." And as there was nothing to be done in the palace, the housekeeper gave him leave. When he got beyond the town, he took out his golden apple, and when the horse sprang out, he swung himself into the saddle. Then he took the silver and the copper apples, and with all these fine soldiers he joined the king's army. The king saw them approach with fear in his heart, for he did not know if it might not be an enemy. But the prince rode up and bowed low before him. "I bring your majesty's reinforcements," said he. The king was delighted, and all dread of his enemy at once disappeared. The princesses were there too, and they were very friendly with the prince and begged him to get into their carriage so as to talk to them. But he declined and remained on horseback, as he did not know at what moment the battle might begin. And whilst they were all talking, took the youngest princess, who was also the loveliest. I misread that. And whilst they were all talking together, the youngest princess, who was also the loveliest, took off her ring, and her sister tore her handkerchief in two pieces, and they gave these gifts to the prince. Suddenly the enemy came in sight. The king asked whether his army or the prince's should lead the way. But the prince set off first, and with his hussars he fought so bravely that only two of the enemy were left alive, and these two were only spared to act as messengers. The king was overjoyed, and so were his daughters at this brilliant victory. As they drove home, they begged the prince to join them, but he would not come, and galloped off with his hussars. When he got near the town, he packed his soldiers and his fine horse all carefully into the apple again. How do you do that? And then strolled into the town. On his return to the palace, he was well scolded by the housekeeper for staying away so long. Well, the whole matter might have ended there, but it so happened that the younger princess had fallen in love with the prince, as he had with her. And as he had no jewels with him, he gave her the copper apple and staff. One day, as the princesses were talking with their father, the younger one asked him whether it might not have been their servant who had helped him so much. The king was quite angry at the idea, but to satisfy her, he ordered the servant's room to be searched. And there, to everyone's surprise, they found the golden ring and the half of the handkerchief. When these were brought to the king, he sent for the prince at once and asked if it had been he who had come to their rescue. "Yes, your majesty, it was I," answered the prince.
But where did you get your army?
"If you wish to see it, I can show it you outside the city walls." And so he did. But first he asked for the copper apple from the younger princess. And when all the soldiers were drawn up, there were such numbers that there was barely room for them. The king gave him his daughter and kingdom as a reward for his aid. And when he heard that the prince was himself a king's son, his joy knew no bounds. The prince packed all his soldiers carefully up once more, and they went back into the town. Not long after there was a grand wedding. Perhaps they may be all alive. Maybe, yeah. Perhaps they may. I'm misreading this. Perhaps they may all be alive still, but I don't know. Give me 1 second. Well, that was a pleasing story. As with many of these stories, there isn't a variation on that one called Iron Hans. I believe that one was the Grimm's fairy tale, Grimm's brothers as well. Oh, this next story we're gonna do is a familiar one, at least to me. This story, my dear scholars, is called To Your Good Health. Excuse me. Sorry again. I am coughing so much tonight. Long, long ago, there lived a king who was such a mighty monarch that whenever he sneezed, everyone in the whole country had to say, To your good health. Everyone said it, except the shepherd with the staring eyes, and he would not say it. The king heard of this and was very angry and sent for the shepherd to appear before him. Helium 20. Oh, I know the star. You do? Interesting. The shepherd came and stood before the throne where the king sat, looking very grand and powerful. But however grand or powerful he might be, the shepherd did not feel a bit afraid of him. Kinshon, should we say it since you started with a sneeze?
Say at once, to my good health, cried the king.
To my good health, replied the shepherd.
To mine, you rascal, you vagabond, stormed the king.
To mine, your majesty, was the answer.
But to mine, to my own,
roared the king and beat on his breast in a rage. Well, yes, to mine, of course. To my own, cried the shepherd, and gently tapped his breast. The king was beside himself with fury and did not know what to do, when the Lord Chamberlain interfered.
Say at once, say this very moment.
I'm going too high.
To your health, your majesty, for if you don't say it, you'll lose your life, whispered he.
No, I won't say it, till I get the princess for my wife, was the shepherd's answer. Now the princess was sitting on a little throne beside the king, her father, and she looked as sweet and lovely as a little golden dove. When she heard what the shepherd said, she could not help laughing, for there is no denying the fact that this young shepherd with the staring eyes pleased her very much. Indeed, he pleased her better than any king's son she had yet seen. But the king was not as pleasant as his daughter, and he gave orders to throw the shepherd into the white bear's pit. The guards led him away and thrust him into the pit with the white bear, who had nothing to eat for 2 days and was very hungry. The door of the pit was hardly closed when the bear rushed at the shepherd, but when it saw his eyes, it was so frightened that it was ready to eat itself. Excuse me. It shrank away into a corner and gazed at him from there, and in spite of being so famished, did not dare to touch him. Kinshon, animal cruelty in this story, not feeding the animals anything but prisoners. Yes, yes. That seems to be a factor in a lot of animals in these stories attacking people. But sucked its own paws from sheer hunger. The shepherd felt that if he once removed his eyes off the beast, he was a dead man, and in order to keep himself awake, he made songs and sang them until the night went by. Next morning, the Lord Chamberlain came to see the shepherd's bones and was amazed to find him alive and well. He led him to the king, who fell into a furious passion and said,
"Well, you have learned what it is to be very near death. And now, will you say, to my good health?"
But the shepherd answered, I am not afraid of 10 deaths. I will only say it, if I may have the princess for my wife.
"Then go to your death!"
cried the king, and ordered him to be thrown into the den with the wild boars. The wild boars had not been fed for a week, and when the shepherd was thrust into their den, they rushed at him to tear him to pieces. But the shepherd took a little flute out of the sleeve of his jacket and began to play a merry tune, on which the wild boars first of all shrank shyly away, and then got up on their hind legs and danced gaily. The shepherd would have given anything to be able to laugh, they looked so funny. But he dared not stop playing, for he knew well enough that the moment he stopped, they would fall upon him and tear him to pieces. His eyes were of no use here, for he could not have stared 10 wild boars in the face at once. So he kept on playing, and the wild boars danced very slowly as if in a minuet. Then by degrees he played faster and faster until they could hardly twist and turn quickly enough, and ended by all falling over each other in a heap, quite exhausted and out of breath. Then the shepherd ventured to laugh at last, and he laughed so long and so loud that when the Lord Chamberlain came early in the morning, expecting to find only his bones, the tears were still running down his cheeks from laughter. As soon as the king was dressed, the shepherd was again brought before him, but he was more angry than ever to think the wild boars had not torn the man to bits. And he said,
"Well, you have learned what it feels to be near 10 deaths. Now, say, to my good health."
But the shepherd broke in with, I do not fear 100 deaths, and I will only say it if I may have the princess for my wife.
"Go on to 100 deaths!"
roared the king, and ordered the shepherd to be thrown down the deep vault of scythes. The guards dragged him away to a dark dungeon, in the middle of which was a deep well with sharp scythes all round it. At the bottom of the well was a little light, by which one could see if anyone was thrown in whither he had fallen to the bottom. When the shepherd was dragged to the dungeons, he begged the guards to leave him alone a little, while he might look down into the pit of scythes. Perhaps he might after all make up his mind to say, to your good health, to the king. So the guards left him alone, and he stuck up his long stick near the well, hung his cloak round the stick, and put his hat on the top. He also hung his knapsack up inside the cloak, so that it might seem to have some body within it. When this was done, he called out to the guards and said that he had considered the matter, but after all he could not make up his mind to say what the king wished. The guards came in, threw the hat and cloak, knapsack, and stick all down the well together, watched to see how they put out the light at the bottom, and came away, thinking that now there really was the end an end of the shepherd, but he had hidden in a dark corner and was laughing to himself all the time. Quite early next morning came the Lord Chamberlain, carrying a lamp, and he nearly fell backwards with surprise when he saw the shepherd alive and well. He brought him to the king, whose fury was greater than ever, but who said,
Well, now you have been near 100 deaths. Will you say to your good health?
But the shepherd only gave the same answer. I won't say it till the princess is my wife.
Perhaps, after all, you may do it for less,
Said the king, who saw that there was no chance of making away with the shepherd, and he ordered the state coach to be got ready. Then he made the shepherd get in with him and sit beside him, and ordered the coachman to drive to the silver wood. When they reached it, he said,
Do you see this silver wood? Well, if you will say, to your good health, I will give it to you.
The shepherd turned hot and cold by turns, but he still persisted. I will not say it till the princess is my wife. The king was much vexed. He drove further on till they came to a splendid castle all of gold, and then he said,
Do you see this golden castle? Well, I will give you that too. The silver wood and the golden castle, if only you will say that one thing to me. To your good health.
The shepherd gaped and wondered and was quite dazzled, but he still said, No, I will not say it till I have the princess for my wife. This time the king was overwhelmed with grief and gave orders to drive on to the diamond pond, and there he tried once more.
Do you see this diamond pond? I will give you that too. The silver wood and the golden castle and the diamond pond, you shall have them all, if you will but say to your good health.
The shepherd had to shut his staring eyes tight, not to be dazzled with the brilliant pond, but still he said, No, no, I will not say it till I have the princess for my wife. Then the king saw that all his efforts were useless, and that he might as well give in. So he said,
Well, it's all the same to me. I will give you my daughter to wife. But then you really and truly must say to me, to your good health.
Of course I say it. Why should I not say it? It stands to reason that I shall say it then. At this the king was more delighted than anyone could have believed. He made it known all through the country that there was to be great rejoicings as the princess was going to be married. And everyone rejoiced to think that the princess, who had refused so many royal suitors, should have ended by falling in love with the staring-eyed shepherd. There was such a wedding as had never been seen. Everyone ate and drank and danced. Even the sick were feasted, and quite tiny newborn children had presents given them. But the greatest merrymaking was in the king's palace. There the best bands played, and the best food was cooked. A crowd of people sat down to table, and all was fun and merrymaking. And when the groomsmen, according to custom, brought in the great boar's head on a big dish and placed it before the king so that he might carve it and give everyone a share, the savory smell was so strong that the king began to sneeze with all his might. To your very good health, cried the shepherd before anyone else, and the king was so delighted that he did not regret having given him his daughter. In time, when the old king died, the shepherd succeeded him. He made a very good king, and never expected his people to wish him well against their wills. But all the same, everyone did wish him well, for they all loved him. Okay, so we could stop here because I can feel my voice giving out a little bit. Or we can do one more. The next one, though, is very long. It's a longer story by the look of it. What say you, my dear scholars? Do you want one more longer story, or should we stop here? Dr. Zadian, protect your voice, hold your voice. All right, we'll stop here. Then, I really enjoyed this book. I think Andrew Lane did a great job with the editing. Oh, thank you for the hydration. And the story choices are really, really good. Um, they did a really good job there. Genshin, yeah, if your voice is going out, Seven Simons isn't an easy one to do. Yeah, yeah, I can tell that my voice is a bit worn out. It's starting to get worn out a little bit. But so next week, my dear scholars. Actually, next week is going to be interesting. Sunday, I believe it's this upcoming Sunday. I will be taking part for the first time ever in a D&D game on stream. It's not my stream. I believe it's Dinah, I think their name is. But I will be with several other streamers, including Sophia and Crusader Corrupted, and we'll be all taking part as a doing a D&D game. I have never played D&D in my life, so this is a big step for me too. I have never done the Amazing Dinah. Yes, Cool Skeleton, Amazing Dinah. I will be taking part in a game, and I am absolutely nervous. I am really nervous. Because we are going to be doing Kinshon improve with magic rocks. Because we are going to be doing that stream on Sunday, I am not going to do a gaming stream this upcoming week. I want to rest myself a little bit because I'm going to be doing a lot of talking and don't like, oh, hello, what are you doing down here? The Galactic Cat has come and visited me. I'm giving her pets right now. Hey there. Hey there. She's staring. She's staring up at me. Anyway, I'm not going to be doing a private mag kitty. Yes, kitty. She's rubbing up against things. I am not going to be doing a gaming stream that week just to rest myself a little bit because I know I'm probably going to do a lot of talking in that D&D stream and I don't want to overtax it. But the but that Thursday we are going to actually start a new book, which will be a book that I had heard of, been considering. I'm going to double check to see if it's proper for us to read. It is a book called Doctor Sin, Syn, and it is a rollicking adventure of smugglers in the Cornwall coasts. It's going to be interesting. I've heard the book. I have seen adaptations. Disney did an adaptation of it once, but I thought it might be fun to actually read it. Julian 20, wasn't that Disney? Yes, it was. Disney did an adaptation of it. Hammer Horror Films did an adaptation of it too, but they had to change all the names. So I thought it might be fun to actually do that book. But for now, my dear scholars, let's see who we can raid tonight. Who is available? Okay, let's see. Should we raid a gaming stream or a reading stream, my dear scholars? What do you think? Julian20 says reading. Okay, it looks like Jivnez is doing a writing and reading stream. I don't know what they're actually doing. Let me double check. Dorothy Dale, A Girl of Tomorrow. That might be fun to visit. I think they're a followers only stream though, but you know, that might not hurt. So, right then. So, my dear scholars, I say unto you, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, till we meet each other again at the study. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Till then, farewell and bye bye.